Good morning. Coming up today on Spotlight, I'll sit down with Augustine Arbelow. He is Executive Director of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. He'll talk about that very important 2020 census. I'll also sit down with Jason Langwell. He's the Executive Director of the Rocket Mortgage Classic. First time that the PGA Tour is coming to the city of Detroit. It's Sunday, June the 16th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight from theCUBE. It's a pleasure having you on Spotlight.
Thank you again for inviting me.
You have so much on your plate. A big department, a lot up under that department. Give our audience there just a quick capsule of what the Michigan Department of Civil Rights watches over.
The Michigan Department of Civil Rights is really the operational arm for the Civil Rights Commission that was established under the 1963 Michigan Constitution. So it's vested, it's a constitutional body. No more than 8 consist of the commission, no more than 4 from the same political party, and to provide the support to the commission in the work in fighting discrimination and building equity. We have the Michigan Department of Civil Rights.
And that balance, I imagine, helps to take some of the politics out of the commission so that it's not terribly partisan one way or the other, because you're dealing with issues, dealing with civil rights and human rights and social justice.
Absolutely.
And that shouldn't be an overly political issue.
Absolutely, you hit it correctly. And that to us is critical. And we have a commission that speaks its mind. And they always do, and we're very fortunate.
Makes your life a little tough sometimes, probably, though.
Well, that's okay, because the role of the director is to support the work of the commission, and in that spirit, we aim to do the people's work and to ensure that no one is discriminated on account of race, national origin, ethnicity, centered around primarily 5 areas: housing, education, employment, public service, and public accommodation.
Right. The commission, so you have to technically answer to the commission.
I do answer to the commission.
The commission, the chair of the commission is Alma Wheeler-Smith from the Ann Arbor area.
Absolutely.
Used to be a state representative, used to be a state senator.
Yes.
And then Stacy Clayton, who worked in the Snyder administration,
is the vice chair.
Vice chair of the commission. All right. The huge issue that everybody's talking about right now is getting ready for the 2020 census. Comes around every 10 years. But it's become controversial, and it has become political in the sense of what can be asked when census time comes around. And the Supreme Court is going to probably get to weigh in on whether or not we can ask a question about citizenship. That's something that you're very concerned with.
Well, we're concerned about it, absolutely, because it's never been asked before. And that is always a concern. Second,
now people are going to ask, person at home that's not a legal scholar like you, doesn't have a law degree, say, well, why wouldn't they ask that question before? Because isn't it about counting the number of citizens?
Well, no, it's not about counting the number of citizens. It's counting the number of inhabitants.
And there's a big difference.
And there's a big difference there. And that's important. And so what we want, and what this state wants, is that all of us want, is to get the right numbers, everybody to be counted. And we don't want to inject politics or political agenda that would cause what? An undercount.
Right.
And to us, the citizenship question gives us concern that people who might otherwise complete the survey, the census survey, will not do so for fear that that information, if answered, if provided, will somehow or other get to them. Under the statute, that information that you provide the census is not to be disclosed. It's kept confidential, and there are penalties for doing so. And so I do believe in the system. And so what I am recommending, and our department is really committed to, is we want everybody to be counted. So we need to educate those who are fearful. And how do we do that? Government typically is not the best person to access individuals who don't necessarily want to be reached. We need our neighborhoods, we need people from the hood, we need everybody who they can connect with people to be counted. It's important that everybody, because if you think about it, that's the ultimate.
That way you get an accurate count as opposed to a phony count.
And why do we want it? Because of the federal dollars that come in.
Right.
A lot of the support and resources that we receive.
The dollars follow the numbers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we can't allow any one of us not to be counted.
All right, Mr. Executive Director, take me back. You were saying something to me before we started recording that goes back to the very origins of the U.S. Constitution.
That's right.
And why there wasn't a citizenship question versus trying to poll inhabitants. Because if you stop and think about the makeup of the country at that particular time, people were coming from all over the world.
Absolutely.
And they weren't citizens necessarily, but they were inhabitants.
That's right, and that's very important. And in addition, let's not forget the racial component.
Right.
The African Americans were viewed as 3/5
of the Constitution.
Of the Constitution.
Right.
Absolutely. So we've come a long way, and that to me is very important. That's something that all of us should be proud to be counted, and we want to be counted. And so I really call on all of our neighborhoods to be active in this process. And the governor, earlier this week, formed a complete count committee. And she made an announcement this week at one in Detroit and one in Lansing. So this is something that all of us take very seriously. We need community-based organizations. We need all those organizations that people trust to get out there and make sure that everyone is counted, especially children under 4, especially renters. You think those are hard people to count.
To get at. Because they're sort of transient.
They're transitory. That's right.
All right. All right. We need to take a little break. We'll come right back. I want to talk about the Elliot Larsen Act and talking about expanding that possibly and whether or not you think the legislature has the will to be able to do that.
All right.
And we'll be back with other questions right after this. The Elliot Larsen Civil Rights Act. This goes back quite a ways in Michigan history, but now there's an effort to be able to expand it. The Governor Whitmer, has clearly made it known that she's for this, feels though it should be expanded.
Sure. Yes.
But she's working in divided government, and I have not seen the leadership of the House and the Senate say that that's one of their top priorities. Maybe a priority, but not necessarily their top priority. Sure. Your gut feeling?
I think that the governor is taking the right approach. I think she's put it out there. It may not be this year, it may not be next year, but it will be, I think, during her tenure as governor. I think she will get it done. I think it's an important step. We have to be inclusive. Discrimination anywhere is just not something that we can tolerate. And to exclude a certain segment of community, valuable members of community, is really not something that we should tolerate. And allowing for anyone to be discriminated on account of their gender identity or sexual orientation is something that something that we should be against. And I'm happy to know that the governor is supportive of this effort. As you know, Chuck, the Michigan, the Civil Rights Commission weighed in on this issue last year, and they took a clear stand in issuing their interpretive statement that found that because of sex, and sex being an ambiguous term, they interpreted it to include gender identity and sexual orientation. So the Department of Civil Rights has been very clear. We are taking those complaints, and we're processing them through our investigative process.
What is it that the legislature may be most concerned with that may make them not want to get on board right away with this?
Well, I suspect that I can't speak to really what they may be thinking. What I do think, however, is that this is not an area of top priority. There may be not agreement in their caucus over that issue. I can't speak for them. I have already testified before the Senate Oversight Committee, and I was happy they invited me to talk to them regarding the purpose of the Elliot Larsen Civil Rights and how we take and how we look at sex. if you think about it, at the federal level, Detroit in the U.S. District Court, as well as specifically the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals in the Harris funeral case, found that sex included gender identity and sexual orientation. That's already law within our jurisdiction, and it covers a number, probably 90% of all employers are required to not discriminate on account of a gender identity or sexual orientation. So I think we're taking it one step further and really stepping in line with what already is the governing law in Michigan.
What is the biggest issue that seems to come before the Civil Rights Department? What do you hear perhaps more complaints about or more concerns about than anything else?
Two areas that typically we receive a lot of focus. Race continues to be an ongoing issue, discrimination based on race, and the other issue has to do with disability. People who are being discriminated because of disability. And those are areas of concern to us, and we always are working on that in terms of educating people. I think when it comes to these areas, we need to get ahead of it. And so we've developed an equity plan to go out and educate communities on how we can be inclusive so we don't face discrimination in the form of complaints being filed.
You've written pretty extensively on a compassionate community is a good community.
That's right.
Correct? What do you mean when you say that?
We're people, we have to recognize our history. And we know there are people who, if we have a race, they weren't at the starting line. You know, they were 20 feet behind, they were 40 feet behind. And therefore, how do we advance everyone? If we leave someone behind, then we haven't done a good job. And so I still believe in that spirit and that value, that all of us are good people. We just, maybe along the path of how we've been raised, we make assumptions, and we've got to we have to truly suspend the way we do things. And I was recently reminded of that by one of my employees who talked to me about how we view interaction with other people. And we all have blind spots. And so we have to be open to recognizing our blind spot and saying, we can do better. Thanks for telling me this. I'm going to do better next time.
Why do you think America is having so much difficulty right now getting its arms around immigration and what our policy should be on immigration?
Well, I think it's because we tend to aim to divide between us and them. We have to remember we're all one, and we have to dig further into it. But when we start hearing at the national level discussions about that person, this person, or we start making comments that really we personalize it. Somehow or other, you're different than me, and the reason you're different is because of your color. Well, all of a sudden that's a division. We have to stop doing that.
Final question. Unfortunately, time is always my worst enemy here. Your department has tried to work very closely with police departments.
Yes.
To try to, and I'll let you put it in your own words, but I guess summarize it, is to realize that we have to be a partner with those who have to police our communities.
That's right. You know, police officers are great people, and they're concerned about, they want safety, they want a secure community. So what we do is we have these ALPAC. These we have around the state about 12 cities that are involved, where we bring together leaders of community-based organizations and law enforcement at the state, county, and local level to meet monthly behind closed doors to talk about their differences and how they can tackle that. And we're very encouraged by it, and we're hoping that this fall we're going to get all of the various chapters throughout the state come together for a meeting in Lansing and talk about what else can we do. And if you really look at Michigan, we've not had the kinds of incidents that have occurred across the country.
That's true.
And I like to believe that in part it has to do because we're willing and pushing for communities and law enforcement coming together, talking about it, and talking about these areas of concerns that they have. And that, I think, is where we need to go.
All right. Augustine Arbalou, appreciate you
You're
coming
welcome.
in. I know your friends like to call you Augie, right?
You're right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
Tell
you.
Jane Garcia
I
I
will,
said hi.
of course.
All right. And coming up, we'll talk to Jason Langwell about the Rocket Mortgage Classic, another major event coming to the city of Detroit. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Joining me now is Jason Langwell. He is the executive director of the Rocket Mortgage Classic. The very first one here in Detroit, making history.
Making history. The first time there's ever been a PGA Tour event in downtown Detroit. It's been over a year in the making. Now, hard to believe we're just 12 days away from our opening ticket day on Tuesday. It's been a great vision. It's been something that when Quicken Loans got involved in the PGA Tour over 5 years ago, down in Washington, D.C., they knew that that was the beginning of the pathway to come to Detroit.
Yeah.
And so a year ago, we really ignited an effort to put together the event, announced it at that time, and since then have been working to fulfill our mission, which is to bring a world-class PGA Tour to the market while also benefiting the Detroit community.
It's going to be at the Detroit Golf Club. That's a historic place in its own right. Beautiful building, beautiful course.
Yeah.
Did you have to make a lot of changes both in the building and in the course?
Not a lot, actually. When the Buick Open went away back in the Flint area in 2009, the PGA Tour had come out and looked at possibly bringing an event to downtown Detroit. Some other companies, some of the autos were interested in exploring it.
Sure.
And they went to Detroit Golf Club and said, if you're going to have an event here someday, there's a few things you need to do. And the good news for us is the Detroit Golf Club went ahead and made those changes in advance. So we did have to add 6 tee boxes, though, 3 on the front, 3 in the back, to stretch it out a little bit, make it a little bit longer. So we're at just over 7,300 yards now. But it's a beautiful Albert Kahn design clubhouse, no modifications needed to that gem.
What caliber of players will we see coming to this?
Well, we'll have 156 of the best players in the world. We've got over, I think now 13 of the top 50 players in the world will be in the field.
Wow.
So, Dustin Johnson, Ricky Fowler, Bubba Watson, just recently
Big names.
Yeah, big names. The best names in golf will be here. And they're doing it because they're excited about the idea of playing a classic Donna Ross design and excited about what we're doing here in Detroit.
The economic benefits to this region. I know we haven't had it yet, so you don't have many years to look back on, but what do you guesstimate?
Well, it's in the millions, right? We know in talking to the PGA Tour that, when an event comes to a marketplace like this, of this size, it's in the millions. I mean, just in alone in what we'll do, we've set a target to give back over $1 million to our worthy charities and nonprofits that will be
Which is a
benefiting.
key part of this.
A huge part of this. It's our mission. It's the reason we're doing it, is to ultimately, every PGA Tour event's mission is to ultimately find a way to make an incremental impact in the community that you're operating.
Feeds it right back into the
community. Feeds it right back, not only to the nonprofits, but we also have a number of our vendors are Michigan-based, Detroit-based. We put an emphasis on diversity, minority-owned businesses that we're utilizing to help build out and operate the event. So those are just some of the examples on how it can just feed back into the community and make all boats rise with the tide.
And the purse for the players isn't too bad. I think last thing I saw, $7.3 million.
$7.3 million. It's the biggest purse of the summer in between the Opens, bigger than any other PGA Tour event between the Opens. The winner takes home 18% of that, so about just over $1.3 million will go to our first champion of the Rocket Mortgage Classic.
Not bad. You can buy some cereal with that.
Yeah, you can.
All right, we're going to take a little break. We'll come right back with some more questions. We hope you stay with us. Jason, for that person at home, they're getting excited now. They're saying, okay, can I still get tickets, and can I afford tickets to this?
Well, you can still get them, and they're very affordable. We made it a point to make everything that we had to offer very affordable for the Detroit community. You can go to rocketmortgageclassic.com. We still have a number of tickets available for grounds passes for just $10 on Tuesday. You can come out and watch our practice rounds. It's $15 on Wednesday. You can bring any up to 4 kids 15 and under, get in free with any ticketed adult all week. So a lot of tickets are available, a great experience. And whether you're a fan of golf or a fan of fun, we got a ton of stuff in the fan zone out there. If you're not a fan of golf, you'll be able to make pizza and play bags, kind of have almost a summer fun type atmosphere out there to enjoy.
Well, I know our station's getting very excited. They've got several specials that they're going to be doing from the course during that weekend. You're leading into all of this with a 5K race, so that's getting people excited as well. But the key to all of this is volunteers. This becomes another major event for this city in which we're rolling out our welcome mat to the world.
It really is. It really is. We'll be we will be the center of attention in the world of sports the last weekend of June. There's no Wimbledon. There's no NBA finals. So we will be on showcase for the world here in Detroit. And we couldn't do it without our volunteers. Former Mayor Dennis Archer is our volunteer chair.
Right.
He and Noel Johnson, our volunteer director, has amassed
and
over 2,000.
He loves golfing.
Yeah, he does, and he's been fantastic. We've got over 2,000 volunteers. A great ambassador. Over 180 people are on the wait list to be a volunteer. So the community has just really gotten behind this, and they will be. I think of our volunteers as kind of the oxygen in the lungs of our event. They're the ones that kind of give it life and allow us to be able to operate it efficiently and be able to give the dollars back to charity that we do. We'll be known for being great golf, but we need to be more than just great golf. So we're kind of looking at the whole city of Detroit as our course. And over time, you mentioned the 5K, we're going to start having an event starting on Sunday before, going all the way through the tournament. Over time, we want to expand that into the weeks leading up to the event and create a little bit of a festival-like atmosphere, in the weeks leading up to be able to make an incremental impact and find a way to kind of ignite and turn on other places inside of the city of Detroit.
Right. All right. So you're just about a week and a half or so out. What scares you the most when you're this close to the wire on an inaugural event?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the things you can't control are always the things that you worry about. And Mother Nature, the weather, right? We want great weather. We can't control that. But no, at this point, I mean, we're ready to go. I mean, we've got a great field. We've got a great golf course. We've got a great experience lined up. We're just ready to get after it. So no, at this point, we just want sunny, dry weather.
All right.
And we'll be ready to go June 25th when we open the gates on Tuesday.
So it sounds like light a lot of candles.
Light a lot of candles, do a little dance. Yeah,
good.
Exactly right.
All right. We're going to hope for the best. We're going to keep our fingers crossed. Yeah. And thanks for bringing this special event to City of Detroit, and wish you the best of luck.
Thanks a lot.
All right,
Appreciate
our pleasure. Thanks for coming in downtown here at theCUBE. And I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight. We hope you have a great week.